So we're going to divide up how many touches we think that these Broncos running backs are going to get this year.
Hell
And
yeah.
I ran through, like I said, and just looked back at the Broncos since the Super Bowl season, Sean Payton since the year the Broncos won the Super Bowl.
Yes.
And there were a couple of things that I noticed. First of all, Broncos running backs averaged 454 touches total across all of them. Saints, 485. So you wind up with another 31 touches, which is
I would have thought
about
more.
with like Kendall Hinton, Chase Edmonds, Greg Dulcich, Mike Boone. They all had 26 to 33 touches last year. So you're getting like a full Greg Dulcich worth of touches. Now, for a running back, it feels more like Chase Edmonds or Mike Boone, who you barely remember from last year. But
Yeah.
who remembers anything from last year?
I would have thought more because they're not constantly trailing. It's hard to run the ball
Yep.
when you're down double digits going into the fourth.
Yep. I did expect a bigger difference too.
Yeah.
Than like a 7% difference. But on top of that,
Yes.
the Broncos in that time
Yes.
have averaged 4.8 running backs getting a touch per year. So you wind up with 4.8.
Yep.
For the Saints, 6.3. Because again, Sean Payton loves to run a bunch of guys out there.
Taysom Hill.
Yeah, and well, it's even
Taysom Hill
crazier.
counts in that?
No, he doesn't count.
Oh.
I decided not to. He was the only tough one. Everybody else is easy. I decided I'm not counting Taysom Hill. He's just
Wow,
Taysom
okay.
Hill. So you could throw. I mean, he got a touch in half those seasons, so another half running back on top of that.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy though.
They also just seem to have loaded running back rooms for a minute there.
They did.
Yeah.
Yes, like Adrian Peterson isn't getting touches. They'd throw in like C.J. Spiller at one point.
Well, they had Latavius for a minute, right?
They did, yeah, for a couple years.
Yeah.
Last year though, 8 Broncos backs got touches. Before that, 4, 4, 4, 4, 5,
Okay.
6, and then
All right.
3 in the Super Bowl season.
Boom.
Yeah, so there really aren't as many. Then you look at obviously Saints; it's like 6 every year, which is crazy. But then the big one, 52% of touches go to the Broncos. Number 1 back, number 2's 33, number 3's 10, and then it kind of dies off. Saints 54, 31, 7.5.
Oh, very similar.
It is similar. It just at the end, it's very balanced. the
Yeah,
way
and I'm
out.
sure once you have Alvin Kamara, that allows you to lean into that RB1 a bit more. right?
Exactly. That's like the last year's 63%, which is the most of any back by a mile.
Right.
But because they didn't have Mark Ingram for most of the season because he was hurt, Tony Jones was their other option, and solid 2.4 yards per carry.
Right. Right. That's a good breakdown, right?
So there's kind of where you're looking at if you need numbers to base this
Yeah.
off of.
Do you expect that kind of split?
I think it's going to be similar. I think
A
I'll
low
throw my
50s,
first one in
low
there.
30s.
Javonte, I'm going 50%. I think it's a nice round number. And, I think in a totally healthy world, it's probably closer to 60. Maybe it's like 58, 59. But
You expect them to lean on Javonte that much?
I think so.
More than they were leaning on Alvin Kamara in New Orleans.
I think about the same. I think it's about the same.
Or 6% more.
I mean, what, 63% for Kamara in 2021, 59, 55, 55.
I guess
there were numbers
average
before
over that time span of 54 got me.
And then
okay.
there's, yep. So
When you
there's,
break it down like that, okay.
I think that it's basically the same as Alvin Kamara, mostly because Kamara was competing with Mark Ingram, and I think Mark Ingram might be a touch better than Samaje and kind of your other options here. Not by much, but that's why I think that's where I start is like that 58%, but because you're probably easing him in a bit, because there's a chance for injuries to flare up at some point this season or for him to not even start the season, I'm just going 50 off the top.
Okay. I like that. I guess I'm not that far off, but I'm actually going to go 45% for Javonte.
Okay.
Early in the year, I think you're going to have to save him. No preseason necessarily. I think they will ease him in, and I expect like we were talking about in the first segment, I do think it could be, 15 touches, but they're 15 touches where we're getting him out in space, we're putting him on the field in high leverage situations,
Yeah.
and we're, so we're not riding him for 20 touches, but we're able to maximize his touches a little more this way. So yeah, doesn't feel like a year where you're riding anyone specifically. So that I'm just a little lower than you on that one.
Yeah. I'm going to go
Samaje.
35% for Samaje. I think
Lean on him pretty heavily for an RB2.
definitely.
Yeah.
And you've seen that, like 2021, Javonte had 51, Melvin had 48, which is crazy. They just didn't really, they barely rotate anybody else in.
Wow,
And that's kind of
yeah.
been the formula in Denver. They just haven't been able to get 2 running backs to stay healthy for a full season, which isn't that big of a surprise.
What was that looking like in Sean Payton's final couple years
The closest
in New Orleans?
they never, I mean, the most ever for a number 2 back was Kamara's rookie year. That was 54% Ingram, 37% Kamara. And then 5% Adrian Peterson, and a few other guys just kind of got a handful of touches. But like at the end, it was 63% Kamara, 19% Mark Ingram, who was out for more than half of the year. So that kind of skews things. And they just kind of piecemealed the rest together. Tony Jones and Alex Armah and Dwayne Washington and Divino Zigbo, former Bronco, Adam Prentice.
Right. I'm going to go 38% on Samaje.
Okay.
Kind of torn between your 35, going a full 40. So I'm splitting the difference. I do think he's just a valuable piece to this offense as a pass protector, as a short yardage back, as a guy who can be your RB1 when need be, a guy who can still catch the ball, and just like an important insurance policy for Javonte essentially in that backfield. So give me 38%. I think it's going to be fairly by committee, especially the first half of the season. So that's where I think the split might be closer to 40-40, and then maybe past week 8, 9, 10, Javonte taking a heavier load. I really hope that's the case, because that would be an amazing way to let this unfold this season.
That would be awesome. I mean, that's the goal, I think. Let's see. We'll go in the order on the graphic.
Yeah. Jose cracked me up with he said Tony Jones gets 0% because he's not going to be on the roster next year.
That is something you factor in. That's why I mentioned, like, typically the Broncos only have 4 guys get touches. So if you wanted to throw zeros out there, I'm not going to, just because I think Javonte's...
It's the Saints having 6, though, that really piqued my interest.
It's the Saints doing what they do, and Javonte's injury situation, and the fact that you're so unsure of the guys at the back. You know, if Tony Jones Jr. was Dalvin Cook, I'd say, you know what? I'll just give those 3 guys 98% and give Burton a couple, and we're going to call it good. But I do think that they want to work those guys in.
At least Tony Jones has some experience in that offense, right?
Definitely. And like Jaleel McLaughlin probably on the practice squad, I think you probably see him in there for a couple games, see if he pops, because you're allowed to play him 2 games. And if he does pop, then all of a sudden you find a roster spot for him and you're off and running.
Yeah.
So yeah, Tony Jones Jr., I have him at 2%. I've said on the podcast, he's not... I treat him unfairly because I'm so excited about the other young guys back there. And I feel like we've seen enough of him to say, I mean, he's probably never going to be a Pro Bowler, you know? And doing the thing that people do when they fall in love with the unknown instead of the guy who you know is just like a steady but, you know, depth contributor. I'm only giving 2.
I was pretty high on him coming out the draft, relatively speaking. Like, he came out some good Notre Dame offenses, and he came in at 220 at the combine, tested horribly. Just, it hasn't happened. Sometimes you just got to be like, you know, the guy isn't who I thought he was. I'm going 0%. I agree with Alex in the comments saying I think another running back ends up on the roster.
That's fair.
Who's not on this list. We could have the field, you know, or like street free agent as a hidden other category. And I think that's where Tony kind of loses out the fight. So, yeah, I'm going 0% here.
That's fair. And I'll say I think Javonte, Samaje, and Beatty make the roster. And Michael Burton. And then Jones and McLaughlin, I think, are both on the practice squad. I think they'll both get a couple touches.
Interesting.
Over the course of the season.
Interesting.
Beatty's up next. I've got 8% for Beatty.
I like that. I really believe in Beatty, though, and I will go 15%.
Ooh.
Yeah,
I like
it. I think the kid pops and does some stuff. So, yeah, and I know we're all high on McLaughlin. I think he's much more of a like practice squatter,
Probably.
special teamer, than actually in that running back rotation. Beatty has some real like this guy could be like as much as excited as people were about Mike Boone last year. I'm excited about Tyler Beatty this year.
I like that. I like that comparison. Jaleel McLaughlin, I've got him at 2%, same as Tony Jones. I think it's kind of the same thing. You go up there, you give him his touches. Jones probably gets to go first because you trust him a little bit more. And McLaughlin, I don't know. Odds are he's not going to be earning too many more touches, although it'd be really fun if he did.
Yeah. I've got 3% to play with here. I'm going to go McLaughlin 1%, please.
That's fair.
Just as, like actual touches at running back. Hard to say.
Yeah.
So much depends kind of on the health of the other guys.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So yeah, I've got 2 for McLaughlin, and I'll go 3 for Burton.
Okay.
Typically fullbacks are getting like it was 1.5% for Boone, but the Broncos didn't have a fullback touch before that since Jano was taking 1 to 2% every year.
So will we post this graphic on Twitter?
Yes.
Okay, give me 2% for Burton, but truth is, I think that 2%, the McLaughlin 2%, and 5% of that 15% for Batty can be played with for the potential free agent that's added after week 3 or 4 of preseason.
Nice.
Should be.
Might be 1 over.
It's 1 over.
Oh,
Okay,
you got to
give
take
me
1 away.
1% for Burton.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay.
Not that far away.
All right. We did it.
How do you feel about that? Who do you think is going to be more accurate?
I'm a little biased, but I think I will.
Mm-hmm.
They were my decisions.
Might be a smidge high on Batty. But again, that's because I think there could be another name in here that factors in that isn't a factor as of now.
Definitely.
Yeah.